The mess hall of the Careth Undying smelled like rendered fat and old fear. Joe liked it that way. She had claimed the corner table 6 weeks after boarding. Not with words, not with violence. Just by sitting there every meal with her datapad and her protein brick and her particular quality of stillness that made even the Dravith crew walk the long way around. The Dravith could smell intent. Joe had learned that early. She had also learned that they couldn't smell math, which was why she kept doing it. Inventory logs, cargo manifests, the slow, patient excavation of the numbers behind numbers. Captain New York let her stay because she was cheap, because she didn't ask questions, and because the spreadsheets balanced in ways they hadn't balanced before she arrived. That was the deal. That had always been the deal. She was 3 lines into a fuel expenditure discrepancy when the sound happened. Not a sound exactly, more like a subtraction, a small, thin absence where noise had been. Joe did not look up. The crew of the Careth Undying had exactly one rule, and it was New York's rule, and New York's rule was, what happens in the mess stays in the mess, unless it comes out of the mess with a pulse, in which case the mess pays for it. Joe had seen 3 things not come out of the mess with a pulse. She had documented 2 of them. She had not looked up for any of them. She kept her eyes on the screen. She kept her eyes on the screen when the Kraveth pirate, New Blood, Di had called him, Galaxy Drift hired muscle with tattoos that hadn't healed right, scraped his chair back across the grated floor. She kept her eyes on the screen when the sound he made shifted from aggressive to satisfied, which was always worse. She kept her eyes on the screen when something small hit the floor near the far bulkhead with a sound like wet cloth, and then made a second sound, which was a sound she knew, which was the sound of something young and alive and afraid, because she had made that sound herself once, at age 7, in a hallway that also had grated floors, and she had never entirely stopped making it, just learned to make it smaller. Fuel line 3, she told herself. 18.7% above projection. The pirate laughed. The mess didn't move. The mess was very good at not moving. Joe looked at the fuel discrepancy. She looked at the number 18. She looked at the pirate's shadow on the far wall, stretched long and gloating, holding something small in one hand by the scruff. The Vekareth cub was no bigger than a human child's shoe. It was the same species as Di, who was the Careth's first mate, who had exactly 2 photographs mounted above his bunk, who told the same 4 stories every shore leave in the same wrong order, who had brought Joe a heat pack once without being asked when her hands went cold mid-shift, and who had never once asked her what she was running from. The cub made the sound again. Joe set down her stylus. She closed her datapad. She looked up. The pirate was maybe 6'2", built like load-bearing architecture, with the particular confidence of a man who had never been surprised by his own body. He had the cub by the loose skin at its neck. He was talking, not to anyone, just talking, the way certain men talk when they want the room to understand the shape of them. Joe stood up. The mess noticed. The mess tried not to notice, which is how she knew it did. She walked across the floor. 14 steps. She had a way of walking that high. The ship's cook had once described as like watching something load, which was either an insult or a prophecy, and High had never clarified. She stopped in front of the pirate. He looked down at her with the particular expression of a man recalibrating the nature of the interruption. Hey, he started. Joe took the cub. Not took. The word is wrong. She removed it. With her left hand. The way you remove a thing from a surface it doesn't belong on. Smoothly. Like a correction. The pirate's hand, his whole hand, fingers and wrist, and the complicated joint below, went a direction it wasn't designed to go. Every bone, the medic would say later. Every single one. Joe had not looked at his hand. She had not looked at his face. She had looked at the cub. She stood there holding the small, shaking creature against her chest. It made a sound. A different sound this time. The pirate made sounds too, but they were not interesting sounds. They were predictable sounds. They did not require documentation. Di was in the doorway. She couldn't have said when he'd arrived. She held the cub out to him. He took it with both hands, and his hands were shaking, and his face was doing something complicated that she wasn't going to look at directly, the same way you don't look directly at a bright thing. It followed me aboard in port, he said. His voice had gone somewhere strange. I didn't know it was. I couldn't find it. Yeah, Joe said. She turned around. She walked back to her corner table. She opened her datapad. 18.7% above projection, fuel line 3. The answer, when she finally found it, 17 minutes later, crew still silent around her, pirate still somewhere on the floor behind her making his uninteresting sounds, was a micro-leak in the tertiary valve housing. Small, long-standing, the kind of thing that compounds. She flagged it for repair. She finished her protein brick. She did not think about the cub or Dai's hands, or the hallway with the grated floors, or the fact that she had stood up and moved, without a single moment of deliberation, as if the body remembers things the mind has spent years filing away under-resolved. She did not think about any of that. She was very good at not looking up. The trick was knowing exactly when to.